coming to you from now the law office of Butel, attorney at law, who's one of my normal show commentators, and he's decided to let us use part of his office. As most regular listeners know, I have retired from the gun store. We are still mentioning their CCW classes on the air because they're inexpensive and they do a pretty good job. However, I'm theoretically retired, except for doing this and some court work in defense of people who need defending. My guest tonight, speaking of that, is murder defense attorney Clark Patrick. Welcome again, Clark.
Thanks for having me again, Bob.
Clark deals with everything. Hopefully you don't need Clark in your professional life. Let's put it that way. Anyway, can you give a little bit of your background, please?
Sure, Bob. I grew up in Montana, been around guns and hunting my entire life. In the early 80s, late 70s, I did a stint with the U.S. Army as a tank commander. And for the last 11 and a half years now, I've been practicing here in Las Vegas doing solely murder defense. So if there's not a body, they don't call me.
So that's why I said hopefully you don't meet him in his professional capacity, because those are tough. This show, we normally start out with some court cases or incidents that took place recently. Some are good shootings, some are bad shootings. Once in a while I use one that's pretty stupid, literally. The idea is to educate the listeners so you understand what the rules are in real life, and if you need to use your firearm in self-defense, you don't end up in criminal court or being sued for everything you own for a wrongful shooting. The cases are chosen to educate listeners, and the idea is you can put yourself in the position that the subject was in and see what he did right, what he did wrong. Sometimes there's more than one solution. Often there's more than one solution. This first story is from the Coleman Times. It took place on the 4th of this month. In Baileyton, Alabama, a Blount County 34-year-old armed intruder was shot around 9 a.m. Tuesday, 9 in the morning, inside a house, and then escaped in a car with a second man who was apparently waiting outside. A resident at the home, and the police did not release his name in this case, allegedly shot the man after an altercation in the house. Investigators believe that only the one guy left the vehicle. He was armed when he entered the residence. An individual woke up to a person inside his residence and the altercation occurred, explained Sheriff Matt Gentry. An altercation ensued between that individual and the resident, who was also armed. Shots were fired. The man who had entered the house was hit. He got back into the vehicle. They ran outside. He got back in the vehicle, and the two fled the scene. The car was abandoned not terribly far away on the side of Alabama Highway 67, if you know where that is. And the driver fled. When the sheriff's deputies arrived on the car, this is after they're all looking for him. There's a very short time elapsed here, 15 minutes maybe. They found the deceased intruder in the car. And the local manhunt started for the driver. According to the sheriff's office, the shooting appears to have been self-defense on the part of the resident. Investigators believe there was an existing connection between the resident and the guy who was in the house, but it appears to be he's the target of a robbery or an assault, not that this was a drug deal gone bad or something like that. I'm looking at this, when the two guys arrive at the house and only one goes in, it doesn't read like a robbery, right, or a home invasion, because they would both go in.
Yeah. Sure.
But whatever the reason was, this guy's collecting a debt, or it's a domestic feud because somebody's dating somebody's ex-girlfriend or whatever. Whatever reason he was targeted, having the firearm saved his life. Obviously.
Absolutely, yeah.
There'd be a lot more details on this, but the sheriff almost immediately after interviewing the guy in the house, label it a self-defense case. There's probably something else going on here.
But even if there is, you're at home sleeping and somebody breaks into your house with a gun, knowing them or not, if they're there to do you ill will, it's self-defense.
It's pretty good self-defense. And you know, this is the kind of case we hear all the time where they say, well, he shot my cousin and this and that, and but when you shoot somebody's cousin when they're in your house at 9 in the morning, uninvited, and actually penetrated the house, it's there was some rhetoric on this further that probably he might have left the door unlocked, didn't remember if he left it locked or
doesn't matter. Still breaking and entering.
It still doesn't say you can enter the house with a gun, you know.
Right.
You're still supposed to knock and go hello, you know. So this is an okay shooting, good shooting. This second one is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It comes from WPXI TV News 11. This is on the 4th of this month, 2 days ago. An intruder was shot by a homeowner during an apparent home invasion Monday evening. Authorities were called to just after 9 p.m. to the 400 block of Marshall Avenue in Pittsburgh's Perry South neighborhood, if you know where Perry South is. The 51-year-old resident heard someone rummage around the first floor of his house. This is, again, 9 o'clock in the evening. He's upstairs already watching TV or going to bed or something. He hears somebody in the home. He grabs his gun, comes down the stairs, and confronts the intruder, who police identified as a 56-year-old guy. Boy, we think of burglars as being younger than that usually. Anyway, according to police documents, the homeowner pointed the gun at the intruder and told him to get on the ground and the police are on the way. A reasonable thing to do. The intruder, it turns out, was armed with a crowbar, probably what he used to break in the house with. He chose instead to charge the resident and struck him in the head with the crowbar. After some struggling between the two, the police say the homeowner shot the intruder in the upper right thigh. The intruder then was transported, when officers arrived, obviously, to Allegheny General Hospital. He's in stable condition. He will be taken to jail after he's released from the hospital and will be charged with aggravated assault, burglary, and criminal mischief. I love that crime.
Criminal mischief. That's a good one.
The homeowner was also transported and treated for his head wound, but he's going to be okay. We, as a rule, when we challenge an intruder or a robber at gunpoint, 95% of the time, they either run or surrender. Run being the most common. This is the 5% of bad guys, 1 in 20, who will attack you even though you're pointing a gun at him. That is obviously not the smart thing to do, but not all criminals are smart.
No, and it's possible, maybe even likely, that the intruder was high on something and that's why he didn't run or surrender.
Yeah, one would think that's just totally irrational. But that's why we always instruct people to keep their distance, whether you're confronting somebody indoors or outdoors or wherever. Some of them will charge you, about 1 out of 20, all for various reasons. Clark hit the most common one. They're high on something, even maybe alcohol. Right. They don't recognize that, you know,
that this guy can shoot. Maybe get shot. Yeah.
It's
and the other thing is to keep maybe some kind of a barrier between you and them, a table, a couch, if you're outside your car or something like that.
Yeah.
So that if they do, it'll take them a while to get there.
So the guy has to change direction to get at you. You give him a free run, and in this case, the guy was close enough to hit him in the head with a crowbar. That's attempted murder right there, probably.
Absolutely.
I just, you know, this happens, and I was happy to find this story because of that. I want you all to remember that the gun store offers, where I used to work, offers low-cost concealed carry permit classes. Every Monday, every Wednesday, and every Saturday. There's $75 for the new permit, first-time permit, and $50 for the renewal. That includes all the paperwork, eye and ear protection, targets, ammunition for qualification and standard calibers, etc. There are a lot of places that teach that once you go in to sign up for the class, then the class is $100, and they charge you $3 for the target and $5 for this, and there's even one place that charges for ear protection if you want to qualify. I don't want to name names.
Yeah,
that seems silly. You have to have ear protection.
Right.
Anyway, you can sign up at thegunstorelasvegas.com if you wish to do that.
Unless you're qualifying with the new AR that I recently built.
Which is in what caliber now?
It's a 300 blackout, but it has a 10.5-inch barrel, so that when you put the suppressor on it, the whole thing is only 16 inches. And you fire the subsonic rounds through it, and it is very quiet.
An SBR.
SBR,
yes.
Which was, another $200 tax stamp.
Yeah, there is registration on those if the gun barrel, what's a pistol and what's a rifle, and the ATF has all sorts of definitions of that. And I couldn't tell you how many people I've met that have fallen into that trap.
Right.
Because they see, like Clark's gun, they see a short AR-15 and on TV, and they go home and saw theirs off. I mean, we get it all the time with shotguns coming in the door.
Sure.
And, well, I saw this on TV. Well, yeah, but on TV, they were depicting a criminal. You see?
Right. Yes.
When I was doing movie prop business, I had lots of short barrel shotguns around, but they're all registered with the government, and we have to stay on set with them. We can't just give it to the guy and say, bring him back next week.
Tomorrow, yeah.
Anyway, everything you see on TV is not correct, and everything you read on somebody's gun blog is not correct. If you want to find what the law is, I would suggest going to a legitimate website, the NRA, the National Shooting Sports Foundation, not Fred, who lives in a house in the High Sierra and hasn't come out to see people in 30 years.
Right. And I was pleasantly surprised because the stamp on the suppressor took a full 9 months, and the stamp on the SBR only took about 4.
Which came first?
I had the suppressor for about a year before I got it.
Yeah, there is a bill in Congress now, a Hearing Protection Act, to take suppressors off the Class 3 list.
They should be.
So you could just use them. And the opposition is, well, then when murderers shoot somebody, the police won't know because nobody will hear the sound and nobody will call. And the people that are pushing that are the companies that make that shot spotter system.
Mm-hmm.
They have in some major cities where they have a high crime rate. It triangulates on the noise of the gunshot. And the politicians, they're arguing for, that will stop them from finding killers. And the company that makes them says, no, it hears a vibration in the air that's in a range that it is a gunshot, and it hears suppressors going off.
And again, it's not the movies. They're not as quiet as they are in the movies. I mean, they're still, and unless you're shooting a subsonic round, you're going to have the sonic boom from the regular round anyway, suppressed or not. So that's a really poor argument. It's just saving your hearing. And, Europe, which has a lot stricter gun laws than we do, almost routinely requires suppressors for hunting for that very reason.
Yeah, and Australia's been that way for a long time. I don't know if they currently are. They're getting so anti-gun, but suppressors years ago were just sold over the counter.
Sure, and they need to be again.
Anyway, it doesn't interfere with the police computers. Those things are really sophisticated. It just tells you there was a silencer fired a shot at 4th and Main,
Which may make it easier to find somebody because, they're not that cheap. So
how fast can you unscrew the suppressor and throw it in? Never mind.
Yeah, fairly quick.
CBS TV 8 in San Diego on the 3rd of this month, 3 days ago. San Diego, California, a homeowner opened fire on an intruder during a break-in early Monday at his University City area home, early Monday being 4 in the morning. The victim awoke shortly before 4 a.m. with his dog barking and then spotted a subject in his hallway. That's always a bad sign.
Never good.
The burglar had likely entered the home through an attached garage. Later on in the interview, the homeowner said he might have left the garage door open. He wasn't sure. But anyway, the homeowner said his emotions are on edge after two suspects snuck through his garage and into his home before sunrise. At 3:45, I heard noises rumbling downstairs, and I sat up in bed. He told the media. There was a flash of light. What he means is you saw a flashlight, actually, and so I knew someone was in the home. As he was coming down the staircase, he had his laser turned on. It seemed there was more rumbling, and somebody was in the foyer and the living room, and that's when I fired. He said he used his Sig Sauer 9mm with a 10-shot clip, California, to scare away the intruders, but apparently missed the subject. We'll talk about that. He added he shot 3 rounds as 2 suspects ran away from his home in the 4400 block of Via Passear. The bullets shattered his front window. In other words, they're running out of the house, and one of his misses shattered his front window from the inside.
From the inside.
Police have not made any arrests. The description of the suspect was not immediately available. There's a lot of discussion available here. Nice to have a dog.
Nice to have a dog.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They're
big dog, especially.
Yeah, you have a big dog. I have a little yappy dog, you know.
Yeah.
My dog's blind, and he hears anything, he just goes off.
Well, you know, it
So,
works.
Including doorbells on the TV. And,
Right?
you know, no, it's on the TV. But from the description, he shot at his own front window as the invaders turned tail and ran.
Well, when they turn tail and run, you don't shoot at them. You just let them go.
You know, and that's the thing that firearms instructors always harp on, that you don't fire at fleeing people. The problem with that is you don't necessarily know he's fleeing when you let the rounds off, because it becomes a blur.
Right?
In the time he had a look at this, did he recognize the guy was starting to turn?
Right?
I don't know. You know,
Yeah.
and that's
Very possibly not.
it requires, and the only person who knows is him, and the shooter doesn't really know.
Right.
They never know how many rounds that we've interviewed. I couldn't tell you, between us 200 people that have been in this, and you say, how many shots did you fire? They have no idea.
None.
If they know how many shots they fired, they're a hitman, because they planned it in advance. You know, that's always a clue for me, that when people say, yeah, I know I fired 4 rounds, and he did fire 4 rounds. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Nobody's that calm if
Right.
you're really in panic mode because your life's in danger.
Correct.
You couldn't possibly remember that. Anyway, it's nearly impossible to check the background in real circumstances. Just from personal experience, one time many years ago, when I was a bailiff, I was out working my warrants. My partner and I saw an individual running down Las Vegas Boulevard with a machete, chasing somebody. So we thought maybe we should talk to him. You know,
Right.
We pulled over, and another guy pulled up in a pickup truck, and we're behind the pickup truck. We didn't know it was involved until it happened. And he started to get in the truck. So the right side, I've got the guy with a machete. My partner's got the guy in the truck. And I yell at this guy, police, drop the machete. And I know I've told this story before on the air. And he looked at me from 10 or 12 feet away and went, like, pointed at himself and looked around to see who I might be talking to. He was the only guy there with a machete. This is like 2 a.m, you know, right in front of where the Mad Dogs and Eastern Pub used to be. He lived here a while. And he then started slowly walking toward me. I screamed at him a couple more times. I gave a little bit of ground, but I heard my partner yelling at the driver, so I can't, you know, let him chase me down the block. And when I decided, okay, this is it. I'm going to shoot him. He must have been a mind reader, because right when I thought that, and I was starting to press on the trigger of my gun, he put the machete on the ground and then leaned on the back of his truck. And he had no clue why I was pointing my gun at him. It turned out he was mentally challenged. He's helping the guy in the truck fill newspaper racks. They had the machete to cut the bands on the newspapers, that sort of thing. He just didn't get it. And, this would have been one of the cases I used. I mean, that would have been an absolutely valid shooting, and I could take my badge and use it for a Frisbee because I killed a guy who was mentally challenged, and and that would be the end of that. Just because he's a mentalist, he was able to do that. The point of me telling the story is, what was in the background behind him?
No
I
idea.
have absolutely no idea.
Right?
It was downtown Las Vegas, Were there other people on the sidewalk? I have no idea. And here I am harping at other people to check the background.
Absolutely.
And I'm looking at the machete, feeling it cracking through my head. I ain't looking. And I don't think anybody does, unless they planned it. It's just, anyway, the problem with this guy in San Diego, he violated the cardinal rule. All of these statements from him were told to CBS TV8 reporters who came, and he's explaining what he did, and he discovered a nail gun had been stolen from his garage in the break-in, and how he fired in self-defense.
Never good. Don't talk to the media, ever. Ever, ever, ever. Talk to your lawyer. Only person should be your lawyer, whether you think it's a good self-defense shooting or not.
This is, I don't explain to Clark, but he has ruined his ability to go to court and say, I was so afraid I had to fire my gun, because he explained. You explain to the police if they ask. You say, here's my ID. I live here, or I live across the street, wherever it is, to orient the cops as to who you are. And then you go, you know what? I'm really wound up. I'd like to talk to an attorney before I make a statement.
Yeah, perfect. And that's it.
They'll send an attorney over from, the lawyers that you retained one probably won't answer the phone at 4 a.m. anyway. But the public defender's office has people 24/7. You will walk in the room and he will say to you, don't say anything until I get a chance to look at the whole case.
Absolutely.
The first thing and the last thing anybody who's been through law school will tell you is, you're wound up. Don't talk. And so you talk to the police to tell them who you are, and don't tell them I won't tell you my name.
Tell them who you are, where you belong.
But anything that has to do with why you fired, particularly the reason you fired,
never. No,
there's
no
other word for it. Never. People will just convict themselves with their mouth, and it'd be interesting to see where this one goes, because with all of this, all these statements he made are to the media, not to the police.
Yeah,
it's just his 15 minutes of fame of being on the news.
Right. Yeah, it's going to get him in trouble.
Very short-sighted of him. Whoever is the other end of the guy who's shot, his wife, children, grandparents, whatever, he's explained that there was a nail gun stolen from his garage. Might have a value of $100 or $200 or $500. Maybe. So he shot him.
Yeah.
Do you see? Okay, I dead that one into the ground. Washington Post reported on the 1st, April Fool's Day, but this one's real, I think. A Montgomery County homeowner heard sounds just after 2 a.m. coming from the basement of his home in the 11,700 block of Tall Pines Drive in Germantown. Germantown is Montgomery County. No, there's another one I didn't put the state on. Anyway, but it was carried in the national paper in the Washington Post. Suspecting a burglary, the guy went to the basement with his gun and found 2 intruders. Apparently, they had entered the home through the garage window or something, and the garage is attached to the house.
Mhm.
So they were in the house. When he found them, there was some challenge given, not recorded. Then one of the suspects threatened to kill him. So he fired 2 rounds, apparently hitting the one who made the threat, according to police. When officers arrived, they found a wounded 19-year-old man in the backyard. He was taken to a hospital for treatment of life-threatening injuries. Police said the description of the second suspect was unavailable. They haven't been able to talk to the first guy yet or get anything out of him because he's in critical.
So his friend didn't stick around and help try to stop the bleeding?
No. This is another one like we had just talked about before. Again, you find an intruder or 2 in your basement and challenge them. You expect them to surrender or flee or quietly leave or say, please don't shoot me, and try and walk away. Instead, one threatens to kill you. Is it reasonable to believe that your life is in danger at 2 in the morning with 2 intruders in your basement?
I think that's pretty reasonable.
There's not a mention in the story that these guys were armed. I presume they probably were. Most home intruders have a gun or a knife or a baseball bat or something, or the crowbar they broke into the house with. But yeah, if there's no gun visible and he says, I'm going to kill you, is that a reasonable cause to believe your life's in danger?
Yes.
Certainly. And are you permitted to believe that reasonably? That, there's 2 guys, it's 2 in the morning.
It's a reasonable belief. Reasonable man standard. Any reasonable person would think their life was in danger at that point.
This is clearly a good shooting. If he doesn't talk to the press, it's easier to defend.
Yeah.
There we are. I'm this case is why I have attorneys on the show. This is it's self-explanatory. WBRC Fox 6 News reported on the 4th of this month in Springs, Texas. The Montgomery County Sheriff's Office arrested, there's an engaged couple that live in the house. They've been engaged to be married. The Sheriff's Office arrested the male half of the engaged couple for allegedly shooting recklessly at 2 attackers who tried to abduct the woman. And the intended victim and the neighbors say, I'll call 911. When she was attacked outside her home on Friday, when deputies arrived, they arrested her boyfriend, her fiance. Deputies said he discharged 5 bullets. I hate when cops talk that way. That's a quote. He discharged 5 bullets, like say cartridges, rounds, something.
Right.
At the suspects in complete disregard and reckless manner. Investigators got a search warrant for the home and seized 2 guns inside. Now, they already had the gun he had. The male was then arrested and charged with deadly conduct. Deputies said the couple was uncooperative. The sheriff's office said it also found out he had gang ties, which the shooter denies. The male did serve time in prison for drugs 10 years ago, but he says since that he's turned his life around. Have you ever heard that before?
Mm-hmm.
I've turned my life around.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sometimes they actually do.
It's entirely possible. Anyway, but that's something investigators hear all the time. But anyway, he's turned his life around. He said it's a humiliating, embarrassing feeling that even my neighbors were saying, why are they taking him to jail when he saved her life? The man was released at his first hearing after the judge found no probable cause for his arrest.
Good judge.
He also says he didn't know why his fiance was targeted in the attack. The attackers are still at large. The couple is trying to get back to normal. This is an unusual case. I am it almost looks like the sheriff has some vendetta out toward the guy, and I hate to think of that in a law enforcement situation. But he's clearly defending himself, defending his
girlfriend.
But he's a felon, and he has a firearm. But if I'm not mistaken, virtually every jurisdiction has an exception for a prohibited person to grab a gun if something horrible is happening.
Your life is in danger, or your girlfriend's life is in danger.
I've worked a couple of the cases over the years where somebody's prohibited and they grabbed a gun out of somebody else's locker and fired rounds to save people. And in all cases, they weren't charged. The police went, it's okay, that was good, you did a good thing.
Yeah.
This guy, I can't imagine what jurisdiction would not allow him to do that if he's a felon. Now there's guns in the house and they shouldn't be
those
there.
are a little more,
And this case took place in Texas.
Texas, which is really strange.
Where, I mean, you can pretty well shoot anybody and not go to jail in Texas. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but they are more attuned to defensive use of firearms than most states. That's likely why the judge dismissed the case, because it's based on nothing. But no one was reported injured by the shots. There has to be more to this than was reported. But
there has to be, if
this makes no sense.
If he did time in prison 10 years ago for drugs, he may have been part of a gang at that time, and he could have been out of it. And for whatever reason, the deputy sheriff may have had problems with that gang recently or continually, and let that cloud his judgment or something. But there's more to
There's got to be something going on here that we're missing. And maybe he knows, from his intelligence unit, he can't say that this guy is the town drug dealer and he's threatening other people. And,
maybe he's still active in all of that.
And that, of course, is maybe he doesn't want to tell the judge that in court, that we know this is a bad guy.
Right.
So therefore, we wanted him in custody and see if we could get information out of him.
Yeah. Very well could be.
You never know. And years ago, when I was working as a bailiff, I want to look at something here. I got a text that says, from a lawyer viewer, quit leaning back in your chair. You look, no, me, because I look smaller than you, because you're sitting up forward and I'm not. So, Charlie, that you can say that. Bob, you're shrinking. All of that. I am losing weight, folks, if you've noticed. But anyway, I had a case when I was bailiffing, and we had the rotating public defenders in our court, and a guy came in, and he was being sentenced for a drug crime, and the public defender that was there, Gary Lieberman, I'm sure you know Gary from years, looks at his notes and says to Judge Quinn, who's sentencing him to 30 days in jail and a $500 fine. No, Your Honor, we had a note in here that if he cooperated with the police and helped them make drug buys, that discharge would be dismissed. And the judge looked over at Gary and said, well, we're not going to do that, Mr. Lieberman. And he got a little feisty, He stands up and he goes, wait a minute, the agreement was made, and judge says, Mr. Lieberman, sit down. We're not doing that. And he still got after him. So I, got over in front of him and said, Gary, sit, it's a done deal. And it turned out that the reason he's being sentenced is he didn't do the deal he was supposed to do with the cops. He never told him, where to find a drug dealer. He just basically blew him off. But it wasn't in the defense lawyer's notes.
That he did that.
He didn't know that. Well, why would it be?
Yeah.
So sometimes you're arguing a case and you don't have the whole case.
Yeah.
But he went to jail. So it was, anyway, this sheriff, there may be some follow up on this Springs, Texas case, really unusual. Um, this just, I've had this on the outline for a couple of weeks, and I never got time to put it into the mix here. So this is from Outdoor Hub. It's a website that deals with recreation in the outdoors. They reported on 3/21 of this year, 17. In Troy, Illinois, a daycare has suspended a 4-year-old preschooler for 7 school days for bringing an empty shell casing from a fired .22 long rifle cartridge to school. Mom of the 4-year-old described what happened. She said she picked up her son from school, and she said in a Facebook post that had gone viral, "Today I picked up my happy 4-year-old from preschool. My arrival was met with a stone-faced teacher who told me he brought a shotgun bullet to school." There's a gun fancier.
Yeah.
"I was horrified. My kid, who just spent the weekend learning gun safety, I was escorted to the office for a sit down, handed a tiny .22 caliber empty brass casing. I never thought this would happen. You see this kind of stuff on the news." They're trying to explain to a 4-year-old,
so
and he's suspended for a week. He doesn't know what suspended means.
Right.
He's 4, for Christ's sake. Apparently, the cartridge case was in the cuff of his pants. And the lady said, there was a lot of detail in this. The lady said they always police their brass because they talk about gun safety, and he was out target shooting, having to shoot his old bolt action .22.
Good for him.
And yeah, that's terrific. Yeah. So he had the cartridge case in his cuff. He discovered that in school, and showed it to somebody or the teacher or whatever, and she freaked. It's a shotgun
bullet.
And
wow,
and they still suspended him.
That is so wrong. It's Illinois, so that tells you a lot.
I don't know where Troy, Illinois is. It's got to be a relatively rural area, because she said they were out just away from the house shooting this .22.
Yeah, okay. Well, you got ignorant people running the preschool, obviously, that called the .22 shell a shotgun bullet.
Well, there's got to be a principal in charge of this teacher. I mean, they went to the principal, and the principal
just as wacky as the teacher.
Anyway, the parents are trying to explain to him why this happened and why he can't go to school for a week. And even discovering how it happened, they still left the suspension in place.
Yeah,
so that's just nuts.
Wow.
Let me have my little. We're still giving away, if you would like. We got a gun show coming up, Crossroads downtown, and I didn't write it on the outline, but I've got passes for it. I think it's May something, Charlie. You know, off the top of your head?
6th and 7th, I believe.
May 6th and 7th, I believe.
Have these guys talked anything about what they're going to do when the city closes down Cashman Field?
No, but they're like really panicked because they have no place to go.
Yeah.
And if you don't know, that the city of Las Vegas has decided to close Cashman Field. I don't know whether they're trying to convert it for the Raiders or baseball, or it's a money loser. And they're closing it, and there's lots and lots of shows that take place, including gun shows. And the gun shows that are booked through December
are okay. They're closing it down the first of the year.
They're closing, some of the restrooms will be closing this and that, but they'll be at the gun show. But, they book gun shows years ahead, and they just said anything booked beyond December, we're shutting it down, period, with nothing that we're aware of that is going to go and replace it. It loses money, Anyway, there's a lot of gun show people I know looking for Crossroads, for one, looking for another venue. And, business-wise, if you're losing money, you raise the rates.
Maybe raise the rates or something.
I don't know what they did, but,
Anyway,
we may have a new city council member in Michelle Fiore after the election, and that'll be before this closes. So
yeah, that might help.
Maybe they do that.
Maybe she can talk some sense into these guys.
Well, that'll give them 3 out of 4 or 3 out of 7. I know Stavros Anthony was against it, and Bob Beers, I don't actually know where Bob Beers stands on that issue, but well, anyway, we'll find out. But this one will be around live. If you want one, you can send a postcard or give me a call or email at firedupwithbob and I will get you a pass. I'll mail it back to you. As I'm no longer with the gun store, I can't have you come pick it up at the gun store. That won't make sense like I used to. And I don't think I want to hand them out at Alan's office.
Yeah.
I don't do that either, but I'm leaning back again. I'm going to be yelled at.
Unless you have a case that you want to consult with Alan, and then with every paid retainer, you'll get one.
There you go. Retain Alan Butel to defend you in a case, and I'll mail you a free Crossroads of the West gun show pass.
There you go.
The last thing I was going to mention, and we got this should probably end the show. The Las Vegas Review-Journal and KLS ASTV8 and us have been following the saga now of a smoke shop clerk who killed what he believed was a charging robber. The intruder turned out to be 13 years old. This has been all over the news. There was a clip on it on the news today, actually. Justice of the Peace Karen Bennett bound him over for trial last week on an open murder charge. The reason I'm bringing this up, this is going to go to district court. They will assign a judge next week or so. It has a huge meaning for shopkeepers who, wait a minute, I got more stuff here. Okay. When someone charges in the door with their hoodie and apparently some degree of camouflaging what they look like. They're one guy opens the door, the other two charge in and spread out down both sides. You have seconds, literally, to react to that.
Or you might get hit on the head with a crowbar like our other guy tonight.
I don't believe there was reason to bind him over on open murder where you have the possibility, theoretically, of a death sentence, and second-degree murder still is probably looking at life without.
Not second degree, but first degree for sure.
If you have a shop, this tells you that if you wait to see the gun or the knife before shooting, you're going to get killed. If you fire while the guy's still in dynamic motion, you'll save your life, but you'll end up in court and maybe in prison. There's a lot more to this case. I'm going to be following it as we get assigned a judge later on, because I've been kind of involved. And I don't know what to advise liquor store owners or whoever right now.
This is a very, very bad precedent that's being set on this case.
If this goes, it's the criminals win.
Yeah, pretty much.
And it's unfortunate this was a 13-year-old kid, and that's why it's getting all this publicity. But he doesn't know it's a 13-year-old kid at the time this took place. I mean, it's just, you have 20/20 hindsight. If you know what's going to happen later, you can make a good decision about whether to shoot or not. Unfortunately, you probably don't know what's going to happen.
Not at the time. Not in that
few seconds. We are going to be back here next week. We're getting a set put together. This is a little catch as catch can. I understand we were actually on the air before we thought we were on the air. But that's okay. There was no cussing or things or whatever.
No.
No,
it was very.
We're learning how to run the computer, and when it says start at 6 or start at 5, and it actually starts going out at 5 minutes of, we'll figure that out. Anyway, you got to see us trying to get ready for the show and yelling at each other, and hopefully not cussing on the air. Next week, I got homicide detective retired Phil Ramos here from retired from LVMPD. One of my very favorite guests. He is just intuitive on homicide scenes. You've run into Phil more than once.
Yes, indeed.
He we'll see where this, we may know something on this smoke shop case, which judges assign or so forth by then. But probably we're not going to know. She gave him 2 weeks to assign it to a judge, and then they have to see who's got time and whatever. Because this is going to be a high-profile case. We had lots of cameras in the courtroom for the prelim. So anyway, we'll see what happens. Phil will be on next week. I thank you very much for tuning in. We're getting this put together bit by bit. This is easy to get to, huh? You can leave the office and walk over here. Did you?
I walked over from my office. Yes, I did. It was very handy.
You want to be on 2 weeks again? No,
no, I do not. And it's even closer to Janine's office.
Oh. I've tried to get her to come on the show.
That would be a riot.
Clark's wife is a retired paralegal.
Well, yeah, she's an office manager now for a law firm.
Amazing opinions of a lot of things that she's just entertaining to listen to, and I can't get her to come on the air. Sometimes she's sitting in the room making faces, but that's as far as I can get. Anyway, thank you for listening. We'll be here next week with Phil Ramos. Thank you for being on again.
Anytime, Bob. Enjoy it.
This is great. And we're getting this place spruced up, and the lighting will be better next week, and we won't be starting before we think we're starting. And it's all coming together. So thanks for listening. If you want to pass again for Crossroads, drop me a note at bob@firedupmail.com, and I'll get you one in the mail. We've got another show coming up. Is there one this weekend, Trey? I think there's a.
I don't believe so.
Is there not one at the Crossroads? Not Crossroads. The Western Trails. No, isn't it? Well, don't know. Didn't look it up. I've been chasing my tail doing this, so we're done. Thanks for listening, and now I will bid you good night.
Good night.
Thank you.